We're going to talk about 6 Netflix original movies we have not yet reviewed for the channel, but all got nominated at this year's Oscars. We've got Mank, Hillbilly Elegy, The Midnight Sky, Pieces of a Woman, a Shaun the Sheep movie, Farmageddon, and The White Tiger. Hey everybody, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to a big review video. We're going to talk about 6 different movies in this. I'm going to try to kind of breeze through them, maybe 4 or 5 minutes each one. They're not going to be, the 11, 12-minute long form videos that I do. For one thing, a lot of these movies are a little bit older. Some came out close to a year ago, some just a couple of months ago. But either way, they were ones that I was either holding off on to wait for the Oscar announcement of nominees, or just ones that weren't really on my radar and didn't think would get Oscar nominated anyway. So there's a few different factors here, but all of them we've not talked about yet on the show. The biggest Netflix movie that we have reviewed on Dan Reviews It is The Trial of the Chicago 7. That is up for many, many awards. I gave that an A, definitely in my top 10 for 2020, which at some point I guess I'll have to figure out once all the movies from 2020 get reviewed here with all the nominations. But I do have a documentary video as well coming soon with about 15 different documentaries. And it's going to be the same kind of format. I'm just going to throw them all into one video. I'm going to do like 2 minutes each and give them a grade. But all 5 of the documentary features nominated for the Oscars will be part of that as well. So we have, like I said, these 5 movies, and they're all nominated in different categories. Some just nominated for one thing, some nominated for many things. So I guess we'll start with the most nominated film, which is Mank. Before we do get started, though, if you are new to Dan Reviews It, welcome. Thank you for finding my video. Please consider subscribing below. Hit that little bell for all the notifications of my upcoming videos. And comment as well. What do you think the chances of these movies are at this year's Academy Awards? So let's start with Mank. This was nominated for many, many things. I think it's the most nominated film this year at the Oscars. Some, quote-unquote smaller type awards like costume design, makeup and hairstyling, production design, cinematography, and sound. But it's also up for Best Score, Best Supporting Actress for Amanda Seyfried, Best Actor for Gary Oldman, Best Director for David Fincher, and Best Picture of the Year. So what makes this movie so special? Well, the theme of the movie is that it takes place in 1930s Hollywood, and it's really about screenwriter Herman J. Mankiewicz, Mank for short, as he is in a rush to finish what will become one of the most highly regarded films of all time, Citizen Kane. So David Fincher is honestly one of my favorite, recent director. He has done a lot of great work, from Gone Girl back to some of his earlier movies like Seven. He always seems to bring something exciting to the table. And his attempt with Mank is a grand one. I mean, he's really, throwing it all in there. It is a long movie. It's 2 hours and 11 minutes. It feels much longer than that even. And I will say up front, look, I'm not a Citizen Kane fan. I've never seen the movie all the way through, but I watched part of it when I was not a kid, but like a teenager. I was probably in high school, and it just is not that good. I mean, look, for the time, yes, I'm sure it was doing some amazing things, and cinematically it was trying some things, but, to look through it with a modern-day lens, it, to me, was very, very boring. So to watch a 2-hour-plus movie about the maker of this boring movie was not something that I was initially excited about, and I think it is probably why I put off watching this movie for so long. I knew it was going to get a bunch of nominations, though. It got nominated very heavily at the Golden Globes, and just, the Academy Awards love movies about old Hollywood. Every year, there's usually one that's up there that's just a love letter to Hollywood. And some of them are very good, and some of them are not so good. This one, I think, falls into that latter category. Now, I will admit David Fincher has done some very interesting things here. For one thing, it's in black and white, and it's in a more classic aspect ratio. All of that's very cool, and from a technical standpoint, this movie does have a lot to offer. I think the cinematography is good, the score is good, the costume design, all the things that it got nominated for in those, smaller type categories, the production design, all of that is very well done. It's very meticulously done. But does that alone make for a good film? I thought this movie was very boring. I will admit, Gary Oldman, is great here as he always is. I mean, Gary Oldman couldn't turn in a bad performance if his life depended on it. So of course he's good. Should he be up for Best Actor for this movie? I guess so. It makes sense. But should this be in the running for Best Picture? Absolutely not. Not in my opinion. There's a lot of good movies up in that category, and if this wins, I will be sorely disappointed. I'm kind of hoping this is one of those movies. Every year there's one at the Oscars that's nominated like for 9 or 10 things and walks away with nothing. American Hustle was like that. I think it was 8 nominations in and didn't win a single one. Irishman, I think, also didn't win anything. Was that just last year? The awards are so late this year, I get lost in what year we're even in. But yes, I think Irishman was just last year. I don't think that won anything either, and that was very heavily nominated. I'm hoping this will be Mank for this year, because this does not deserve to win much of anything. Maybe for some of the, production design type stuff, that I could see. But let's even look at who it's nominated against for some of these things. Best production design. The Father is the one big movie I haven't seen yet. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Mank, News of the World, and Tenet. I mean, the production design of Tenet is, second to none. That should probably win. Best cinematography. Judas and the Black Messiah had great cinematography. News of the World, great. Nomadland, oh my God. I think Nomadland should win that. Trial of Chicago 7, that was okay cinematography. Look, Mank deserves to be in all of these conversations as an art piece, as a, technical film. But as a film for entertainment, I was not entertained by it. I thought it was very boring. Don't really like any of the characters that are in it. Yes, Oldman turns in a great performance as always. Seyfried turns in a decent performance. But on the whole, I just found this to be a snooze. I leave Mank with a C+. Let's move on now to Hillbilly Elegy. This one I think is very interesting because Glenn Close is the only nominee that's up for the Oscars for this movie. And not only is she up for an Academy Award for Supporting Actress, she's also up for a Razzie for Best Supporting Actress this year. Razzies, of course, are the ones that are the worst of film for the year. So interesting. I don't know if that's ever happened, that the same actress for the same performance. Of course, Sandra Bullock famously was nominated for The Blind Side, and then for the Razzies, All About Steve. But that was for different performances, different movies. So this movie is based on a very popular book by J.D. Vance, and it's basically his sort of autobiography as a young kid, and even in his adulthood, like in college era. And this movie is directed by Ron Howard, who I used to love. I used to really like Ron Howard, but this movie and many other recent entries, In the Heart of the Sea, and some other ones have just not been up to snuff. I think the last really good movie he had was Rush, and that was about 10 years ago with Chris Hemsworth. But this one is an interesting one to talk about because it's got a very, very low critical score on Rotten Tomatoes, but the audience score is actually pretty high. 26% of the critics like this movie, and 84% of the people like this movie. And so usually when things like that happen, I fall somewhere in the middle, and that's exactly where I fall with this one. So anyway, this is with this dude, JD. He's a kid in the, I guess, late 70s maybe, and leading into the sort of, present day, I guess, whenever the book was out, which is 2011. And so, I guess it's in the 90s, I'm sorry, he grew up in. And so the young version of JD is played by Owen Aslaktos, I want to say. And then Gabrielle Basso rather, is the older version, who you may know from different shows. He was in Showtime's The Big C, for example. But personally, I thought the kid version was so much better, so much more engaging. Everything with the adult JD I found to be just boring. Frida Pinto plays the girlfriend in the current day, and like just their chemistry was bad. He's a bad actor. I don't really know him from too many things, but he's just a bad actor, and this part was not interesting for him. The most engaging part is the young version of JD. And they split the movie probably about 50-50. And Glenn Close is, in both parts as the grandmother. Amy Adams is in both parts as the mother. And which is another problem I have with the movie. I think this is Amy Adams' like cry for Oscar love. Give me the Oscar. Give me the Oscar. Because look, she is owed an Oscar, I think, for many different performances. I think she will get one eventually. She is one of our best actresses today. However, this movie comes off, and Ron Howard's directing does it too. I think everybody involved with this movie was so like, okay, what are the Oscars like? What are the award shows like? Well, let's give them this, this, and this, and hopefully it all comes together, on an emotional level. And for me, it did at times. Amy Adams is this drug-addicted mother, and she's, trying to get clean every so often. It's not working. Haley Bennett is here, by the way, as JD's sister as well. In the present day, there's no, I don't think, young version of her in the film, or maybe there is, but very minimally anyway. And Glenn Close, of course, the grandmother who's trying to keep it together, but she's also got a lot of her own issues. I thought Glenn Close was great in this movie. I think she deserves this Oscar nomination. I do not think she deserves a Razzie for this. She is by far the best thing about this movie. And I think the kid that plays the younger JD, I think he's very good as well. And I think that is the more engaging storyline. The adult JD with, mostly that's with him and Amy Adams. There's a little bit of Glenn Close in there as Mama, but not that much. It's mostly JD, Amy Adams, and Haley Bennett is the sister. And that just, for me, didn't connect at all. I was really hoping for more of the childhood stories, because that's, for me, where it all was coming together. The stuff about JD going into law and the girlfriend, none of that interested me at all. So here's another pretty middling one. I know these first two are not coming out of the gate very strong, I admit. I'm going to leave Hillbilly Elegy also with a C+. Several different reasons. I mean, I would rather watch this again than Mank, but from a technical perspective, Mank is leaps and bounds better than this. So sort of a little bit of a weight there, but C+, I think, for both movies is just about right. So let's talk about Pieces of a Woman. Now, this is up for Best Actress at the Oscar. This is the only award it's up for. Vanessa Kirby is the actress in question. And I think, look, I'm going to do a whole episode about the Oscar nominees and who should be in it and who they missed or whatever. But Best Actress category, I think, is just about perfect the way it is. Viola Davis, Andra Day, Frances McDormand, Carey Mulligan, they all deserve it, as does Vanessa Kirby. I don't think Amy Adams would belong anywhere in this conversation, but I think this is pretty good the way it is. So Pieces of a Woman, this is an incredibly hard movie to watch. Let's start there. So Vanessa Kirby plays Martha, and her husband, Shia LaBeouf, plays Shaun. They are basically about to be parents for the first time, but have a home birth that ends in tragedy. And that's like the first, I would say, 20-25 minutes of this 2-hour movie is the home birth. I mean, it is very intense, and it's very hard to watch at times. Vanessa Kirby is really, really giving it her all here as this Martha character. And then the last hour and a half of the movie is much more on an emotional level for her acting because since, they lose the baby, they're both going through grief in different ways. Ellen Burstyn comes in as the mother of Martha, and they're also taking the woman to court, the midwife that, they say killed the baby, and this and that. Molly Parker plays her, I think, in a pretty decent role as well. This movie is a hard watch. It really is. I'll never watch it again. I'll say it, There's a lot of movies like that, though, and that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad movies. I'll probably never watch Blood Diamond again. That's usually my go-to because I love that movie. I think I gave it an A, maybe an A-, but, it's up there for me. And it could be one of my favorite Leo movies after, of course, Titanic and I guess Once Upon a Time in Hollywood now, but it's definitely up there. But I'll probably never watch it again. I don't think there's a reason to. It's just so depressing and so hard to watch. And that is this movie. But the thing I like the most about this movie, other than Vanessa Kirby's performance, is that it's very intimate. It's some low lit scenes a little bit, but it's more ambiance. It's how your dining room or your bathroom or whatever would be lit. If you were these people, I feel like, and so it's very authentic in that way. One of the things I actually didn't really like about it is Shia LaBeouf's performance. And he didn't end up going on the awards circuit because of some things that have surfaced recently about him and some sexual allegations and charges. I don't know if there were charges, but anyway, so I don't think he was going to be an awards contender anyway, but I don't think he deserves to be for this film. I think Honey Boy last year or 2 years ago, absolutely, yes. He was great in that movie. I don't think he's phoning it in here, but I think this is so much the Vanessa Kirby show because that's how the script is written. I mean, this is Pieces of a Woman. This is her story, and he's sort of, window dressing in Martha's story. And I kind of think that's how it's designed. But for me, that was a slight flaw because I would have liked to see more from his perspective. And, him and Martha's mother sort of have the same feelings on various things. And so I thought that was interesting. But I don't think they explore that quite enough. And then the stuff about the midwife and taking her to court, that was just angering. I really was mad about that whole subplot. What I really liked the most is, Martha's journey through this whole thing. And I think Vanessa Kirby plays it wonderfully. I'm not sure if she'll win the Oscar for this role, but I think she definitely deserves to be nominated. She deserves to be in this conversation. I leave Pieces of a Woman, I should say, with a B. So we're getting better, a little better. But now, well, we go back down because Midnight Sky is next. This movie is nominated for just one thing. It was up for Best Score at the Golden Globes, but that's not what it is nominated the Oscar for. They've nominated it for, is it Best Sound? Or sound mixing? Production design? Wait, now I have to look. I don't really know. I thought I had these all. Best visual effects. Okay, yes. That makes sense for this film, that it would be nominated for visual effects. This is a movie with George Clooney that I've kind of been talking about for a little while because when I kept sort of reaching the end of 2020 and into January, I kept saying like, oh, there's a handful of Netflix movies I still want to review. The new George Clooney one, da-da-da-da. Well, I finally watched it about 2 weeks ago, but I was like, all right, well, I'm going to wait to put this in the Oscar review just in case it does get nominated for something. And sure enough, it did. And basically, Clooney plays Augustine, who is a lone scientist in the Arctic, who's trying to contact a crew of astronauts returning home, which includes David Oyelowo, Felicity Jones. There's a whole handful of people. But this movie's biggest issue, well, there's many. I will say that I guess the special effects are fine. I've probably seen better, so I don't think it should win Best Effects. But also for Best Score, the score is fine. But again, I think there's more going on than that. But the biggest issue with this movie is that it's very piecemeal with a lot of recent sci-fi space movies, and all of them were better than this. Some by a lot. I mean, it takes pieces of The Martian, Passengers, what was the one with Ryan Gosling? Life, I think, or no. Well, he was in First Man too, but I think Life is the one I'm thinking of, and that's Ryan Reynolds, not Ryan Gosling. Jake Gyllenhaal, that's the one. But it takes pieces from that. Maybe Ad Astra a little bit too with Brad Pitt. So it takes pieces of all of these much better movies and sort of mixes them in a bowl and gives us, it like spits out this sort of very, very uninteresting movie. There is a sort of twist to it that I'm not sure that I could necessarily see it from miles away, but I also didn't really care. I think there's some interesting aspects to this film. And look, Clooney, maybe he's not on the level of a Gary Oldman where every performance is great, but I think he's a very good part of this movie. He's rocking the Clooney beard for this. He's in Letterman beard mode, and just the pacing of this movie just is kind of slow to get through. It's actually probably more interesting than Mank, although there's not as much going on visually by a long shot. But I have to admit, I guess the subject matter is a little bit more interesting than Mank. But I didn't really care much about these characters because they didn't give me much to care about. So in that respect, I think the movie kind of doesn't trust the audience enough with more original material. They're like, hey, remember when you liked this in The Martian? Well, we're going to do this in this movie, but it's Clooney. It's like all of his Ocean's buddies, Brad Pitt, Matt Damon, like they're just all there to hang out, Monuments Men, whatever. But the result is just so much less than any of those movies. Through it all, again, I think I would rather watch this again than Mank. So take that for what it's worth, I guess. But I do give it a lower grade. It's not quite in that C+ range that Mank and Hillbilly Elegy were. I teeter sort of between C and C-. I guess for a couple of good performances, Felicity Jones is good here, as always, Clooney's Gravity even is like, they take a little piece of that, and that's Clooney's own movie. Boy. I guess I'll give this. You know what? No, it doesn't deserve it. C- for The Midnight Sky. See, sometimes I don't do my grades until the review, until I'm really kind of thinking about what I like and what I don't like about these movies. And that one I think probably deserves a C- through it all. So, all right, let's move on here. We have 2 more to go. I was hoping to get this all in within about a half hour, do about 4 or 5 minutes on each movie. So far, I'm hitting that mark, so thank you for sticking with me. Next, we have a Shaun the Sheep movie, Farmageddon. This is up for Best Animated Film, and boy, there's some heavy hitters here. Onward, Over the Moon, I thought that was okay. Soul and Wolfwalkers, so we'll probably go to Soul. They usually go to the Pixars. And actually, Pixar has 2, I guess, this year, Soul and Onward. But Over the Moon is another Netflix one that I did review already. I gave that, I think, a C+ or a B-, somewhere in that range. I was not super thrilled with it, but it was okay. Shaun the Sheep movie, this really, there isn't much to say about the plot of this movie. Basically, it's another Shaun the Sheep adventure. If you know the show or the first movie at all, it's sort of more of the same, except this time they throw in an alien, and the dog is sort of hot on the trail, but Shaun the Sheep and his cohorts, sort of develop different hiding techniques for the alien as the alien's just trying to get back home. And then the second half of the movie is sort of on the UFO and doing things in that way. And then there's also some agents trying to track everything down. I like this movie. Look, I was very unfamiliar with Shaun the Sheep when I reviewed the first Shaun the Sheep movie in, I don't even know when that was, 2015 maybe. And I really enjoyed that. I don't typically love this animation style. It's sort of the claymation stuff that they do, like with Wallace and Gromit. I'm not sure if there's a more specific term for it than claymation, but that's basically what it is that style. I think sometimes it could be done well. I didn't mind Missing Link. I don't know if that's from the same company, but that was fine. But what sets this movie and the Shaun the Sheep, I guess, character apart from everything else is that these are basically silent movies. Shaun the Sheep does not talk. There's some grunts here or there from him or the dog or the farmer that lives there. Aardman does all of these, Aardman Animation. And I really like these movies over the Wallace and Gromit movies. Flushed Away was not bad. That wasn't specifically Wallace and Gromit, but again, same Aardman people. But what keeps these movies great is that the characters are all actually pretty fleshed out, even though they don't talk at all. And that's hard to do in this day and age because we're not used to making silent type films. Back in the day, it was, every character was like that. Of course, silent era, and even into 30s, 40s, and 50s, a lot of like cartoons were still like Tom and Jerry, they never talked except for, very, 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 little. But this is a lot like the Minions. And I think where the Minions fail is those characters are all the same. Yes, the one has one big eye and the other one, whatever. But like they all have names, I guess, but like they're not different. They're all the same stupid characters, and they work well on the side in Despicable Me, but they can't do their own movie. And where Shaun the Sheep excels is in giving these characters actual character traits, character development. I don't know that there's much development, but they all have their own specific characters, and the gags are hilarious. These are gag movies, and usually they work very well. There's a lot of pratfalls, there's a lot of, sort of miscommunication and that kind of thing. And it's all done through the visual aspect. And that's why I think these movies are so exciting to watch. Yes, Pixar excels at the more emotional stuff and that kind of thing. And Disney, of course, a lot of action in their movies, especially like, with princess movies, Raya and the Last Dragon and stuff. But where Aardman, I think, does very well with these Shaun the Sheep movies is in the jokes. It's much funnier than any other animated movie I've seen this year. Yes, that does include Soul. So I really, really enjoyed this. It's rated G, so it's for all ages. Kids can enjoy this just as well as adults. And I think young kids especially will really get a kick out of some of the antics, and I think they'll like the animated style as well. I leave Shaun the Sheep Farmageddon with a B+. Not quite on the level of that first one, but very, very funny for sure. All right, finally, we're going to talk about The White Tiger. This really came out of nowhere. I had seen this come up on Netflix's, originals content this year, and I'm like, well, I am doing a lot of 2021 standalone reviews, I looked into it, and I was like, all right. I mean, it seemed mildly interesting, but I didn't really have much interest in making its own standalone video. But then it got nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, and I was like, okay, well, wow, now it's part of the conversation. So I watched it last night, and essentially this movie is about this, basically a servant. He's played by Adarash Gaurav, and he is he's a very poor villager, and ends up, leaving India to go to the United States to become a driver for this very rich couple played by Rajkumar Rao and Priyanka Chopra Jonas, who, by the way, I only basically know as the Jonas wife. I'm not even sure which Jonas she's married to. I think is it Nick? I think it might be Nick Jonas. But anyway, that's basically all I know of her. I don't know if I've ever seen her act in anything, but she plays, the lead female in this. But anyway, they end up becoming friends with this driver, even though the rest of the family is like, well, he's nothing. He, spit on him. He stinks. He literally and figuratively, he stinks. We want nothing to do with him. But these guys actually become friends with him. However, on a drunken night, the husband, I don't know if they're married, but anyway, the lead male character, Ashok, he decides to take the wheel. He's like, you know what, you've had a rough night driving, let me drive, but they're all drunk. He ends up killing a kid. And so, the second half of the movie is a lot about that and a lot about the fallout from that, etc. This was a very interesting movie because it's kind of like two movies at once, or maybe even three movies, because the last, the epilogue, the last 5 minutes is almost a completely different movie entirely. It's almost like setting up a sequel for this one, where there is none. But this one is based on a book as well, like many things are. And the book is I think the book is also called White Tiger, but it was adapted in both the written word and directed by Ramini Bahari. And I don't know much about him. I think his direction's okay here. The script is good, but it really is several different movies at once. I have to say that. I will say that Priyanka Chopra actually is a very good actress. I really enjoyed her performance in this. And I think the lead actor does a great job here. Adarash Gaurav really gets this character right of, sort of this put upon servant, basically, but is still trying to kind of, be friends with these people because they want him to be their friend, but at the same time, he like keeps calling him sir because he's like, know my place kind of thing. And of course, the history of, being respectful in the Indian culture, very important to him in this movie. I thought he did a very, very good job. But there's something emotionally missing from this movie, and I can't tell if it's the odd tone and the different sort of, the first 45 minutes is mostly about him being a servant. And then the next 45 or, an hour is basically about the fallout from the accident and what do we do, and everybody's sort of scattering, to make it right or cover their own butt or whatever. And then the last part, which obviously I'm not going to go into spoilers, but the last part is like completely outside of all of that and sort of just it really is an epilogue, but as an epilogue it should only be like a minute. It goes on like 5, 6, 7 minutes, and you're like, okay, are they setting something else up here? So it's very odd tonally, but I did really enjoy it. And by the way, the whole kid thing isn't necessarily a spoiler because that happens in the very first scene, and then he's like, well, hold on, let me start the story another way, and then we see the first part of the story. So it does happen in the first scene. It's not a huge spoiler, I don't think. So anyway, in the interest of time, I'm going to leave The White Tiger with a B. So we had some very, very interesting movies. Nothing, though, on that level of the Chicago 7, not even really close to it. That is in my top 10 of the year. I don't see any of these movies even sniffing at that top 10. Maybe Shaun the Sheep in the top 20 or 25, maybe. But yeah, I'll have to make that list coming up. But I'm to about 185 movies for 2020. So, tough to break into that top 20, top 25. But there are more nominees to get to. The Father, I think, will get a standalone video. I'm going to try to see that in theaters because that's in theaters now. I will do a video about a bunch of documentaries, not just the nominated ones, but a bunch of other ones that I watched over the year. And then there's a couple of movies I thought might get nominated for the Oscars that didn't, that have been, critically acclaimed or maybe nominated elsewhere that I still would like to review as well, like First Cow, Malcolm and Marie, and stuff like that. So lots more coming on the channel. Thank you for sticking with me. I tried to get it in about a half hour. I think we succeeded moderately in that, maybe a few minutes over. But anyway, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you back here next time.